My mother never liked flying, and of course she and Dad were only married for 1.5 years. And when I wanted to fly, she said, "You don't have to do that." She resented it very much. She had a beauty shop at the time. I think she wanted me to become a beauty operator, and I was very much against that.
Joan Lemley grew up in the air. Her father was a pilot and Joan was second seat.
And he let me fly, and I was about 17 or 18. And he turned the controls over to me, and all I had to do was keep a steady course.
Joan's course was clear. She wanted to fly, and she had connections. Jackie Cochran was a friend of her father's, but even that wasn't enough to walk into the WASP.
She and my father were very good buddies, let's say back in the 30s, quote. Yeah, right. And when I saw her in the Pentagon, she said, "I don't think your dad wants you to fly." And I said, "Well, I'm going to." And she said, I said, "What does he want me to do?" She said, "Well, you can work in my office." I said, "I don't want to work in your office. I want to get in the WASP." So I got in a class, and she let me know October 1943 that I was assigned to a 1944 class. By the way, what we wore were men's fatigues, and we called them zoot suits. I got there in January, went through training, graduated. My dad pinned the wings on me, and I was off. Signed to Brian as an instrument instructor. That's pretty good. I think I had a unique experience because when I started instrument flying, my instructor said, "Where have you done this before?" And I said, "Nowhere." I said, "I haven't had any instrument flying." He said, "Oh, yes, you have." And I told him what I'd done, flying with Dad, mapping and holding a course online and holding my wings level and holding the altitude. He said, "That's it. You learned instrument flying."
2 months before Class 4410 graduated, the word came down. Class 4410 would be the last class. Letters were sent to WASP announcing their deactivation effective December 20th, 1944.
Oh, I was heartbroken. Heartbroken. It was awful. I was mad at Congress. They were the people who put us out of work. And their simple statement was that the boys were coming home from overseas and the boys were angry because they didn't have any planes to fly.
When they disbanded us, they took all of our records, they sealed them, they stamped them classified, and they filed them away in the government archives. They were there for 33 years unopened, so that when the historians wrote the history of World War II, of course, they didn't have our records available. Therefore, we weren't in the textbooks, or we weren't in the historian's account of World War II. It was not until 1977, 33 years after we were disbanded, that the Air Force put out a PR statement saying that they were graduating 10 women pilots, the first women in history to fly military aircraft. And we said, now you've crossed the line.
In 1977, the WASP were recognized. President Jimmy Carter signed legislation giving the women military status and benefits. It was a big step, one that meant they were no longer living in the shadows of history.
I didn't care about the veteran status. The only thing I cared about was the fact that now we can have an American flag on our coffins. That was the only thing that was important to me.
We have Cochran's signature here, and then it starts.
Okay, which other changes?
You meet a WASP, you learn what she did with her life, and you go, wow, maybe I can do something too. And it isn't about flying. It's about living beyond your little box. You know, it's about doing something extraordinary on your own. I call it your own particular mountain. You can climb higher than you think you can. If you believe it's the right thing to do, they did. That's what the WASP did. Every time they climbed in an aircraft, it was a dangerous mission. Everything they did was dangerous. And yet, they did it anyway, because their country needed them.
33 years after they received military benefits, they would receive their highest honor.
I started thinking about what could we do nationally? What could she do? And I thought, Congressional Gold Medal. Maybe that would get America's attention.
Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Deanie Parrish, who will receive the gold medal on behalf of all of the WASP.
They served a purpose greater than just flying. But they also had the challenge of, they didn't just have to be good, they had to be better. I hate to say that. I really do. I wish it weren't true, but they had to be better than the men to fly. They had to prove it every time they climbed in a plane. They had to prove it. And they had to keep their mouths shut. You know how hard that is for women? To keep their mouths shut? But they did it.
I didn't expect it at all. I think I'm in awe of the fact that we're getting a Congressional Medal. It's hard for me to believe. Particularly since I was just doing something I love to do.
Well, everybody else earned it for me because I didn't do an awful lot because I got in so late and I wasn't able to do an awful lot of things, but all the ones that did have earned it for me anyway.
I think they're absolutely groundbreaking. They're pioneers, they're trailblazers, but I prefer to use the word vanguard. They are vanguards. They are a catalyst for evolutionary reform for women in the armed forces, and I think we owe them a lot.
Millions of Americans, I promise, will learn for the first time that there were women pilots flying military aircraft during World War II. And that's what's important, is that their children know. If you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, nothing is impossible. We prove that.
I was lucky to get in when I did, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
I just thought I was leading the best of life it ever could have been imagined.
I didn't care whether I got recognition or anything. As long as they'd give me these airplanes to fly, I was happy.
I believe I speak for every WASP when I say to you that it was both an honor and a privilege to serve this country.